informational resources that we'll have available to you on the internet. Your microphones are muted due to the number of participants. If you have a question, we ask that you please type that in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many as possible after the presentation. If we're unable to answer all of the questions, we'll send you a follow-up email. Okay, so starting, as Rebecca said, on June 1st, the Department of Workforce Services will begin payment to eligible providers.
Lisa?
Yes.
We can't see your slideshow.
You can't?
No.
Oh, no. Huh.
There we go.
Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. Apologize for that. Learning all these technical things was probably the hardest part of our jobs. So I'll start again there. On June 1st, the Department of Workforce Services will begin payment to eligible providers based on enrollment pursuant to state law. Some procedures and requirements under the new policy are different from the emergency pay by enrollment policy used in March to September of 2020. In this webinar, we're going to go over some key points of the new policy and important changes that providers need to know. These include start dates and attendance requirements, changes to the 8-hour rule, new enrollment policy, provider reporting requirements, parent change reports, and certification. Providers are still required to report the actual start date of care for each child. A child must attend at least 8 hours in the initial benefit month to be eligible for pay by enrollment. A child must actually attend with the provider. Enrollment without the child ever attending is not something we can support. Throughout this presentation, the term initial benefit month refers to the first month that you are paid subsidy for a child or the first month after a break-in subsidy. Once the 8-hour minimum requirement is met for attendance in the initial benefit month, subsidy can continue as long as the parent remains eligible and has a need for childcare. Providers must report when a child is no longer enrolled and when a child who remains enrolled has not attended in 90 days. That's a key difference in the new policy. Here's an example illustrating how the minimum 8-hour attendance requirement now will only apply to the initial benefit month. A parent enrolls a child and a start date of June 15th is reported. The child attends 4 hours on June 15th and 5 hours on June 16th, but then goes on vacation for 2 months and finally returns to care on September 1st. Because the 8 hours were met in the initial benefit month of June, there is no overpayment for July and August. As long as a child remains enrolled in childcare, DWS will allow payment by enrollment to reserve a spot for a full month, even if the child does not attend, for up to 90 days. Once you accept a subsidy for a month for the child, you are committed to having space available for that child for the entire month. Even if a child only attends sporadically, you should have space to accommodate them on the schedule agreed to with the parent. If you want to fill the spot with another child for the following month, you must report the first child as no longer enrolled, at which time payments will no longer be issued to you. As a reminder, if a provider terminates care after issuance, DWS will only pay for actual hours of attendance in a benefit month. If you do not have space for a child that you have been paid subsidy for, you have effectively terminated care and will have an overpayment. For example, a provider has been paid by enrollment for July benefits. The child has not attended in 6 weeks, but the parent takes the child to the facility on July 20th, which would be a regularly scheduled day according to the care agreement. The provider states that they do not have space and cannot care for the child. Since the provider is unable to care for the child, the provider is considered to have terminated care and will have an overpayment for the month of July. Now we're going to discuss provider change reporting. Changes must still be reported within 10 calendar days of learning of the change or by the 25th of the month, whichever is sooner. And so you are all aware, we have had some technical issues lately with the reporting functions in the portal. So to ensure that all of your changes are getting reported, please email your changes to the provider helpline at occ@utah.gov until further notice. We will announce on the What's New page on the provider portal when to use the portal to submit your changes again. The new changes that providers will be required to report are when a child has not attended for 90 days, when a child is no longer enrolled or not expected to be enrolled in the following month, and when a child has never attended or attended less than 8 hours in the initial benefit month. When a provider reports these changes, the subsidy case will close at the end of the report month. However, the parent may contact their caseworker to request that their case be reopened within the following month if care is needed. Providers can report on the portal that a child has returned to care, or you can email OCC. Here are some examples of how and when to report. Say it's November 16th. Alice has remained enrolled, but has not attended since August 18th. When reporting this change in the provider portal or to the OCC helpline, report the 90th day of non-attendance. Report the situation immediately, if possible, but no later than November 25th. In the DWS provider portal, under the actions buttons for the case, you would select child has not attended for 90 days. Enter the last date that the child attended as November 16th, the date that this became a reportable change. In our next example, as of November 25th, Billy, who was supposed to start November 19th, has never attended. Report this immediately as it is already the 25th of the month. In the DWS provider portal, report child never attended. In another example, the parent reports to you on September 10th that they will no longer be bringing their children to you in October. You accept this statement as notice of disenrollment. You report in the provider portal on September 10th that the children are no longer enrolled as of September 30th. Always report the date the enrollment ended or will end. Remember, if you report changes during certification, but after the 25th of the month, it may be too late for DWS to take timely action on the case. It's best to report changes as soon as you are aware of them. Let's go through some additional examples. A parent enrolls a child and a start date of June 15th is reported to OCC. The child does not actually start until August 5th. Since the child did not attend a minimum of 8 hours in June and not at all in July, subsidies paid for June, July, and August are all overpayments. The provider should have reported in the provider portal by June 25th that the child had never attended. This would have prevented overpayments for the additional months. Another example, a parent enrolls a child and a start date of June 15th is reported. The child attends for 4 hours on June 15th and does not return. The provider reports during certification on June 29th that the child attended less than 8 hours. It is too late to stop July's payment. The provider will have an overpayment for June and July. The provider should have reported by June 25th that the child had not attended 8 hours in the initial subsidy month. Had the provider reported the situation by the 25th and the child then returned and attended for 8 hours by the end of the month, the provider could report child returned to care and there would be no overpayment. Now let's look at parent-reported changes in providers. If a parent reports a change to DWS before next month payment is issued, DWS will stop the payment to the first provider for the following month, even if the parent did not give the provider notice. For example, A parent reports a change of providers to DWS on June 26th, but has not told the previous provider that the children will no longer be enrolled. There is still time to stop the July payment to the previous provider. The new provider will be paid for July, and the previous provider will not receive a payment based on enrollment. If a parent reports a change to DWS after payment for the following month is issued, and the first provider reports that the child is still enrolled, changes will not be made for the current or following month. There will be no overpayment as long as the provider agrees to continue to hold the child's spot. The parent will be responsible for payment to the new provider if the first provider has been paid based on enrollment. In most cases, the new provider will not be paid for the same month. There are some exceptions, such as a current pandemic-related closure. Here are some examples. A parent reports a change of provider on June 30th. July benefits have already been issued to the previous provider. The previous provider is allowed to keep the July payment if the child was still enrolled with them for July, and the provider continues to hold the spot. The new provider will not receive a subsidy payment until August. Another example, a parent reports a change of providers on July 6th. Due to the holiday weekend, the children have not attended the previous provider in July, but are still enrolled, and the provider is reserving space for them to attend. July benefits have already issued to the previous provider. The previous provider is allowed to keep the July payment. The change will become effective for August benefits. And one more example. A parent reports a change of providers on July 6th. July benefits have already been issued. DWS learns that the children have not attended the previous provider since April 30th, but they're still enrolled, and the provider has been reserving space for them to attend. Since this is not a reportable change for the provider until the 90th day of non-attendance, the previous provider is allowed to keep the July payment. The change will become effective for August benefits. And just one more example or a couple more before we move on. A parent reports a change of providers on August 10th because the previous provider does not have space for the children. The children have not attended the previous provider in August, but the August benefits have already been issued. The provider is required to report a child as no longer enrolled if they want to fill the space with another child and cannot be paid double for the same space. The provider will have an overpayment for August. And one more example. A parent reports a change of providers on December 3rd. The children have not attended the previous provider in December, but are still enrolled. December benefits have already been issued. DWS learns that the children have not attended the previous provider since August 16th. The non-attendance became a reportable change on the part of the provider on November 13th, the 90th day. The previous provider will have an overpayment for December only, and the new provider can be paid for December. Now let's talk about certification. Certification will still be required each month for licensed providers and will still need to be completed between the 25th of each month and the last calendar day of the month. The certification process is the same, but some of the questions are different. New points for certification include the following statements. I have reviewed each case and reported any children who were never in care or attended less than 8 hours in the initial benefit month. I have reported any children who are still enrolled and have not attended for 90 days. And I have reported any children who are no longer enrolled or, to my knowledge, will not be enrolled next month. As a reminder, if you report changes during certification, but after the 25th of the month, it may be too late for DWS to take timely action on the case. Another reminder, providers who have a pattern of not certifying may be subject to a review of their records by OCC. DWS administrative rules require providers to keep time and attendance records for each child, and records must be retained for a minimum of 3 years. You are encouraged to require the parent or authorized person to sign each child in and out daily. OCC provides many resources for providers to keep up on important changes. DWS will post updated information regarding the pay by enrollment changes on the DWS provider portal What's New section and in the frequently asked questions. A link to the recording of this webinar will also be available on the portal so that you can refer back to it. Additionally, an addendum explaining the temporary changes is being added to the DWS provider guide. The frequently asked questions and provider guide addendum will be available online by June 1st. Providers are required to agree to the provider guide addendum within 30 days by logging into the DWS provider portal. As always, if you have questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to email us at occ@utah.gov. We want to thank you very much for taking the time to watch this webinar and for the work you do with Utah's children. You all deserve a round of applause, in my opinion. And for the remainder of the hour, we will address the questions that you have sent in the chat. And thank you again.
Doesn't look like we have any current questions. There were a couple that I answered along the way. Are there any other questions? This might take some time to sink in, some of these new changes.
Absolutely.
Hey, Anne, I'm wondering, it looks like we have a couple of telephone callers. They can't
Okay.
see the chat. Do you maybe want to review the questions you answered in the chat so that they can hear them?
Yeah, if I can find them again. One of the questions, oh, here we go. One of the questions was just clarifying that this is a 2-year temporary policy change that the legislature passed. And so it's will be in place through June 30th of 2023. Another question was just clarifying that this is for childcare subsidy payments through DWS, and it is. I believe there was another question that I might have missed. I'm going to go back up to the very beginning, just make sure.
There is a new question. A couple of them coming in now. And
Okay.
anyone that has a question, please send it in. So the one, Carolyn Morgan asks, Carolyn, it's moving on me while I'm trying to read it. Does this have anything to do with the grants being offered, or is this a completely separate issue? Is this only subsidy on children needing subsidy? Yes, this change is only regarding the subsidy program for qualifying families through DWS. It doesn't have anything to do with the grant program. Do we need to check in each month if we don't have any qualifying children in care? Debbie, it's a good idea to check in with on your provider portal regularly. We do post other things on there besides just looking at your children in care screen, etc. For example, the addendum to the provider guide will be posted online, and you do have to certify that, well, basically when you sign into the portal now, you are agreeing to all the changes. So you do need to do that in order to agree to any changes to the provider guide.
That's if you wanted to accept future subsidy children, if you don't have any right now, but there's no certification requirement unless you actually received a payment in the month,
Right.
the current month.
So another question from Danielle: if a child is enrolled but not attending in summer due to a long vacation or other obligations, can I claim them? And yes, for up to 90 days, like we gave in the examples, a child can be absent from childcare for 90 days. Let's just say today, 5/18 happens to be the 90th day. You would report today as their last day of attendance. Don't report the date 3 months ago because that'll trigger an overpayment. You report the 90th day. So yes, if you were paid for 3 months and they're still not back, you're fine. You won't have an overpayment for that. Let's see, from Francine, is there anything we need to do or fill out in order to be in the program? Well, you do need to go into your provider portal and accept the terms and conditions. Other than that, no, everyone will automatically be in this pay by enrollment program. All DWS providers will be in the program. And a question from Christy, the legislation was also supposed to expand eligibility, correct? If a parent has been denied for income in the past, should they reapply? In, I believe it was March of last year, we did raise the income limits to what's called the 85th percentile. And that is a little bit misleading, and correct me if I'm wrong, that means that a parent on subsidy should be able to access approximately 85% of quality programs in the state with that income limit. Is that right?
So this is different. So
Okay.
this is talking about the income level. So it's 85% state median income.
Oh, well.
And so we did expand that already. And you're right, Christy, that I believe that was included in the legislation, but we've already been doing it for the last more than a year now. And so if parents want to reapply, that they think they might qualify, they're, of course, we want to encourage them to do so and make sure that if they're eligible, that they can receive the benefit.
Absolutely. And sometimes parents have just minor changes in income. It might be as little a difference as a few hours a month can make a difference in their eligibility. So absolutely, we encourage everyone to apply and reapply when they feel it's appropriate. That's an excellent question. They're all excellent questions. Keep them coming. Okay, Kishka. Yes, if anyone missed the first part of the webinar, it will be available online on the portal. There will be a link to the webinar. Our programmer might not be able to get that on there immediately, but it will be there. All right, Jackie asks, how does this affect kids already enrolled in subsidy? It seems to talk about new kids enrolled after June. So as far as pay by enrollment goes, June is the first month. So for example, when we talk about initial benefit month, June will be the initial benefit month for all the children that are already enrolled and receiving subsidy. And then of course, when new children start, their first month is the first month under the program. So, all right. How do you change your rates? That's been the topic of the day, Kimberly. Normally, as you probably all know, you would change your regular full-time rates on the Care About Childcare website or with the office, your local Care About Childcare office. Right now, there are some technical difficulties with the Care About Childcare website also, and you can email your rate updates to the occ@utah.gov, and we can update those for you at this time. If you are reporting a custom rate for a child, say, for example, some providers have parents who work for them and they only charge them a portion of the full-time tuition. Those need to be reported normally in the portal. But again, right now we're having some technical difficulties. So we ask that you also report those in an email to occ@utah.gov, and we will happily update those for you. Okay, we have another question from Irmar. If I have a child that I provided care for and I now have temporary custody of them, does payment stop? Yes, I would have to say yes. Anne, do you want to comment on that one?
The way that I'm understanding the question, I would say yes as well, because now you would be applying as a legal guardian for childcare for that child, and we can't pay subsidy to somebody that's a legal guardian. It would have to be to a different provider.
Right. Okay. Tanya asks, what if a parent called DWS and said her children wouldn't be attending daycare for summer and closed her case? I will be holding her spots until school starts again. Would I be eligible to collect subsidy? And unfortunately, no, this is a situation where if the parent reports that they don't need care, we can't continue to pay based on enrollment. One of the requirements for continuing care based or continuing subsidy based on enrollment is that the parent states that they still need childcare.
So I think this is like an educational issue for the parent, and something that we're trying to train our eligibility staff on, is that if the parent has all intentions of returning her children to childcare at the end of the summer, and it's going to be less than 90 days, we don't want to close the case in that situation if that's what the intent is. If the parent doesn't know what the situation is going to be and just has to close her case, then we would do that. But if there's if she's planning to return and she wants to hold those spots, then we shouldn't close the case, and that would be the only way that we would be able to continue to pay you. The case has to remain open in that scenario.
Right, the case has to remain open. Thanks, Anne. And you, as providers, you can certainly help educate parents about these changes. Sometimes they're not going to get that information from anybody else, unfortunately. So absolutely be talking to your parents. All right, Connie asks, so if I have a change now, do I need to send an email, or I reported it today on the portal? Connie, we will catch those reports on the portal, but if you can send us an email, that would be great. We have to run a special report and go in and manually report all the changes if you don't send us an email anyway. So yes, for now, until we post on the portal that it's working again and you can continue to report on the portal, we ask that you send an email. Thank you for that question. That's great. And Jane, yes, again, no problem. We will have this video posted on the portal for you to watch later if you were a little late.
Yeah, and it might take a week. I don't know how quickly we'll get it published, but we will let you know once it's available.
Absolutely. Okay. Shelley, your question about a UI number, unfortunately, I can't answer that right now, but we can follow up on that and try to get that information to you. Okay. Mike, hi. We're still receiving overpayment requests from the previous year, even during the pandemic. Is there a way to make the parent more accountable? It is frustrating to us because ultimately we are assessed the overpayment since we received the funds. This should help. I hope we have a more long-term policy change where DWS is paying for slots and not just attendance. So, well, right now we have 2 years, and I guess I can't comment further than that. It is terribly frustrating for providers, and we hope that this change will help. And Marisol asks, what about parents who need to do their review? Will we continue receiving the subsidy? And Marisol, no, we can't continue subsidy if the parent doesn't complete their review, because the case will close. And if the case is closed, there will be no payment based on enrollment. So that's another thing providers can help with. If you click on the case information in your portal account on the Children in Care page, it'll show you the review date and maybe just give parents a little nudge to complete that review on time. Okay, Mindy asked, did the income limits change at all for eligibility in the subsidy program? And Mindy, we talked about that one a few minutes ago. The income limit changed over a year ago, and that change will remain in place until June 30th, 2023. And Leslie asks, what does it mean pay based on enrollment? I have 1 DWS child and 4 not DWS. So obviously this only pertains to payments that you receive for DWS subsidized families. Pay based on enrollment means that where before we had the 8-hour rule, where a child had to attend a minimum of 8 hours in a month in order for the provider to qualify to keep the payment. Now with pay by enrollment, a child can be absent for 90 days and you can continue to be paid as long as you have the child still enrolled and the parent says that they still need childcare. Okay, does the total, Sandy asked, does the total use of the subsidy for 90 days affect qualifying for any of the additional grants? I don't believe so. They're really kind of separate programs. Excuse me. Okay, Chelsea asks, our summer programs are charged weekly. Will this help alleviate the financial gymnastics we have to do in splitting up a month subsidy into weeks? Especially because of COVID, we get quite a few weeks canceled. So Chelsea, I believe that this could help because if a child's absent for up to 90 days for any reason, including any kind of illness, the provider can still be paid. Our system only deals with monthly rates. So we still have to ask you for a monthly rate and post that in the system. But it will help with some of those absences and you would be able to be paid for some of those. And okay, Danielle asks, again, we addressed this question a few minutes ago as well. Can you only claim children that qualify for state subsidies? Yes, this is only for children on state subsidies. We don't have any control or involvement in your financial arrangements with parents who aren't on our programs. Okay, Brenda says, I have a child that is gone for the rest of May and all of June, court order visitation, but on the portal, I do not have a payment for June. Okay, that's good. Because if they're not going to attend in June, that parent is most likely going to have to reapply when they return if that case has closed. You can send us an email so we could look at it in some more detail. If the child has unenrolled with you and doesn't attend in June, then yeah, we'll have to start them over when they return. Okay, these questions are really good, everyone. Like I said, keep them coming. I see 32 new messages and we'll keep going. Excuse me. Is there a chart showing income limits for parents? Yes, there is on the jobs.utah.gov website. In the top right hand side of the screen, you can click on divisions and childcare. Scroll down to the childcare box, and then you'll scroll down to more information. There is a wealth of information on the childcare division section of the jobs.utah.gov website, and there is an income chart there as well. It can be a little bit cumbersome to understand once in a while. So if you have questions, please email us any kind of questions regarding income. Okay, Irmar would like to know, if I have 2 children who will be away for 2 months during the summer, can I accept 2 other children who may need care for the 2 months of summer care? That is an excellent question. The answer is no. If you have children that you accept subsidy for, you are holding the spot for those children. Even though you think, well, they're away on vacation, they're not going to be here until September 1st or whatever the date is. They may end their vacation early, they may have to cancel, anything could happen. So no, like we said, you can't be paid double for the spots for the children. Okay, and this is one we answered already. Yes, Danielle asks, is this only for kids who receive state subsidies? It is only for kids who receive subsidies. Okay. let me read this one. Tina, can you send us the link to the portal on how to sign up again? And can you send the income for parents to see if they qualify? I haven't had DWS clientele, so I'm not sure how to do this. And Tina, if you've ever had a portal account and your name looks familiar, so I'm thinking that you probably do, your account should still be there. But if you need assistance with that, you can certainly send an email to occ@utah.gov if you need to reset your password, for example, so that you can access the portal. And yes, like I said, that income chart is online, but we're also happy to share that information with you on an email. Okay, another question. Do you have any tips to incentivize parents into applying for the subsidy? Well, their incentive would be paying less out of pocket, and we do encourage anyone who thinks that they might qualify to apply. And like I said, sometimes they might be really close to the income limit, but it can be a very small difference, can change the outcome. So we encourage everyone to apply. Okay, Sandy asked, if a parent withdraws for summer effective 6/1 of 2021, we can secure their slot to return by 9/1/2021. If they do not want to re-enroll come 9/1/2021, that is the last day we report to not have an overpayment from June to August. Sandy, that's basically true, except for the fact that June only has 30 days, but July and August have 31 days. So technically, if they withdraw as of the 1st of June, I think it would be the 29th of August that you'd need to report. And you'd need to report a little bit before that, because by the 29th of August, as you all know, we try to issue payments a day or two before the end of the month so that the funds are available to you on the 1st. That's our best practice. So you need to report that before the payment for September issues. You would not have an overpayment for June to August, but if they're not going to be there in September, then you would have an overpayment if you receive that funding. Okay, can you have a parent on DWS work for you and receive payment? Tina, that is okay in a center environment only if the parent does not provide care for their own child. It doesn't work in any other setting other than a licensed center. So if you're a licensed family provider, no, you can't receive payment for a parent that works for you. Okay, another question, Lori, if a parent has a baby or surgery, will we be paid for those days? And again, Lori, the program is set up pretty much to do that. You would be able to keep the children in care or reserve the spot, either one, for up to 90 days. For parent illness or surgery, child illness. The reason the child is not attending doesn't really matter. As long as you report, like I said, if the parent decides to unenroll them and tells you clearly that they're not bringing the children back, or if you get to that 90-day point and you need to report that the children have not attended. Okay, we'll keep the questions going. I have a question. Today I got 2 kids and their dad said he contacted DWS and they should send the email, but I didn't receive any information from DWS. So what it sounds like that's referring to is a verified start date from the provider is a required verification for child care assistance. So we request that providers report start dates and names of children, case numbers to the occ@utah.gov email so that we can report that properly on the case. Sometimes the caseworkers will call a provider and then they don't include that request on the verification checklist that the customer receives. But if you haven't spoken to anyone about a start date, just go ahead and send an email to occ@utah.gov and report that information. Okay, and we have another question about caregivers' children. if a caregiver works for you, can you be paid? And this is specifically for a home license, so no. The answer is no. That we can only pay subsidy for the children of an employee in a center when the parent does not care for their own children. Centers have separate classrooms and separate areas, pretty clearly defined. So that is why we can do that with a center. Okay, Marisol, if a child doesn't come during the summer, but he will return again for the school year and we're keeping the spot, will we be able to receive the subsidy for 2 months? 2 months, 60 days, absolutely, that falls within the guidelines. And again, just report if the parent actually unenrolls the child or if they reach 90 days of no attendance. Right, Shelley asks, we don't get many calls for parents on subsidy. How can we find parents that might need care? The Care About Childcare website is one place where you can do that. You can indicate on your account that you accept subsidy. And of course, you can also, you can advertise. I know that costs money, but that's why Care About Childcare is there. That's kind of your free spot to advertise. There is an information page that you can use to highlight any aspects of your program that you want to highlight. You can submit pictures, and like I said, you can state there that you accept subsidy. Okay, Brenda, I'm not sure what that means. Not closed and not unenrolled. So maybe you can.
I think that might just be answering another question.
Might be, yes. Okay. If you are securing a slot for a child in the 90-day period, do you still report each month that the child has not attended 8 hours during certification? And that's from Sandy. No, you do not report that the child has not attended during certification unless it goes over 90, unless it reaches the 90th day, I shouldn't say goes over, if it reaches the 90th day. And remember that securing a slot doesn't mean enrolling a child and they never attend. They do actually have to attend the minimum 8 hours, but only in that first month.
And also I wanted to point out that the questions have actually changed in the portal. So what you're certifying to is a little bit different, as Lisa explained in the slides, than what you've been reporting. So keep that in mind too, that you're actually answering different questions now when you certify.
Right, exactly, thank you. Okay, Bruna asks, what will happen if I enroll a child and the other center is still getting the funds? How will I know that the other center is getting funds or if the parents are eligible to receive funds? And this is something, of course, we can't cover every possible scenario in the examples, but if you enroll a child, the best practice would be to get in touch with OCC right away. If you know that the child received a subsidy or may have been in care at another facility receiving subsidy, we can tell you, we can look at the case and we can tell you if the parent would be eligible or potentially eligible for a payment to you in that month. We won't tell you specifically that this provider's been paid or anything like that, but we can usually tell you if you should be eligible to receive a subsidy payment for a specific month. So best practice is to report new children right away. And if you have concerns about payment, ask those questions. If you don't get that in your return email, just ask. We'll look it up and we'll give you the best information we can. There may be instances when we don't know right away, but we'll certainly do our best to help you. And of course, most of you know, I want to give a shout out right here before I forget to Teal and Connie, who are our stalwart subsidy provider helpline helpers. They're fabulous, and any questions like this that you have at any point, they're wonderful. We all answer questions, but those two do the bulk of them, and I couldn't be happier to work with the two of them every day. So if you miss getting your question in right now, don't worry about that, just send it to us. Okay, The parent, Lori wants to know if the parent can call DWS on, let's say, today and say they're switching daycares for June, but they don't tell me or give notice. Am I just out of luck? And unfortunately, Lori, yes. It would be really nice if parents always gave notice, but they don't always do that. If the parent notifies DWS before benefits for the following month have issued, we will stop payment to you, and the new provider will be paid. The best way to keep an eye on that is, again, to check your portal information, because if a parent reports to us today that they're switching daycare, most likely the caseworker is going to end date you as the provider on that case, and then your portal will show no payment for the following month. Okay, Jane asks, my last DWS child is leaving for the summer. How does this affect the COVID payments I've been getting, or is this completely different? It's different, Jane. We're talking strictly about subsidy payments today. And Lori, no oops, it's okay. Okay, another question, Sandy. If a provider receives an overpayment and we charge based off of a child's enrollment slot, can we, as the provider, try to collect the full month's tuition for the month the overpayment happened to the parent and send to collections if they do not pay, as long as we have documentation that we could bill them in this situation? And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not really capable of making a statement on that. We, like I said earlier, we don't involve ourselves in the particular financial arrangement between you and parents. The child care agreement is between you and the parent, always. DWS provides a subsidy benefit to parents who qualify, but our contract is not with you. So I can't comment really further on that situation. And there's a question about whether we're counting 90 calendar days or 90 business days. That is an excellent question. We are counting 90 calendar days. And yes, Christy, always email occ@utah.gov as soon as you have a new family. That is the best practice. Okay, a question from Tricia. To clarify on the employees whose child attends a center, the employee cannot work in the same room as their own child. That is correct. Okay, I have rooms broken out by ages. So if the employee's child moves to the next age group, I need to move the parent to a different room. Basically, yes, the parent cannot be caring for their own children. Okay. Chantel, what time does the meeting end? Technically at 7. I'm happy. We still, it looks like we still have 50 messages. I'm happy to continue to answer questions for a little while longer, as long as that's okay with Ann and Rebecca.
I think that's okay. I think that if people want to exit, if you feel like you've gotten enough information,
Absolutely.
you're welcome to leave at 7 or sooner for that matter. But we can keep going for a little while longer, but we are going to have to cut this off at some point. So we may not
Right.
get to everybody's question.
So I hope I'm not going too fast on the questions.
Can I make one suggestion? With the questions that have come up in the chat and in the Q&A, it looks like we do have one person with their hand raised. I'm wondering if we could maybe, but I also think, Kimberly, you may have put a question in the chat. I'm just wondering if we could answer hers and then move back to the chat. Would that work in case she needs to drop off?
Yeah. For some reason, I cannot see the hands raised. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm not able to see that either, Rebecca.
All right, I'll let you know. We just have one. It's Kimberly Bear. Kimberly, if you had your question answered, go ahead and take your hand down. I'm going to unmute you now so that you can talk and ask your question.
Kimberly, are you there? I know Kimberly did ask a question earlier that we covered, so maybe she got her answer already.
Kimberly, it looks like you're unmuted. Can you
hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just was curious because I have a child that I've been waiting to find out if they're going to qualify for June. It says they're open still, but I don't know if that means because of this month, but it doesn't say anything for June. So I was just wondering about that.
So you're saying on your portal, it shows a payment for this month, but it does not show a payment for next month?
Yeah, and it's open right now, but I don't know if it's just because of May.
Okay. There could be some different things going on there. So the best thing would be if you don't mind sending us an email to occ@utah.gov with the case number, and then we can look at that specifically for you. We're not looking at any specific cases tonight, but we'll sure take a look at it for you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. That's a great question.
So we have one more hand. Francine, I'll go ahead and allow you to unmute yourself. Francine, looks like you're unmuted if you want to ask your question. All right. One last chance, Francine. All right, Francine, if you're able, you can put your question in the chat, and then Lisa, you can go ahead and continue with,
Okay,
I'll let
great.
you know if we have another hand raise.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, a question about how hours are paid. It says I get paid 163 hours per month. Is the 163 divided in 3 children? That's kind of a, that's a good question. No, it would show the hours, the 163 hours or the hours that the parent qualified for. And basically you would get paid 163 hours for each child. So the 163 isn't divided, it's multiplied. Okay, and Francine, oh, here's Francine's question again. I have an employee with kids in care that I get paid for. Will it be an overpayment? It most likely will be an overpayment. And would that be an overpayment to the parent or the provider?
I would, most likely it would be the parent.
Okay.
A lot of these questions are, we need to kind of look at on a case by case basis, and they're
Right.
not really, specific to the topic that we're talking about tonight.
Right.
So I think, as we're going through, we've got 55 more questions here.
Right.
I think we might need to, we can save the chat and we can see who's contacting or who's asking the questions, and we might need to follow up with some of you individually, or we could send out, something addressing the questions that don't get answered tonight.
Exactly, yes. If you don't get an answer tonight, and for some reason we don't get back to you, just please email us. We're here to help. That's why, that's our job. So Sandy, thank you. Sandy says Teal and Connie are amazing. I am so grateful for them. And I have to repeat that. Yes, thank you. We're always happy to hear that. Okay, if a parent wants to start June 1st and has applied for subsidy with DWS, do we providers need to verify that the child plans to start on June 1st? This is from M. Crowther. Yes, you do still have to report the actual start date of care. So yes, please just send us an email with the child's name, start date, case number, and we will report that. And okay, does any of this apply to FFN providers? And yes, this would all apply to FFN providers, except for the certification issues. FFN providers don't have to certify, but everything else does apply to FFN providers. Okay, another excellent question. I have parents who have applied to DWS but are waiting for response from DWS before they start. It sounds like DWS may be waiting for us, the provider, to verify. Is that correct? That is absolutely correct. As I said earlier, a verified start date agreed on by the parent and the provider has to be reported by the provider before any care can be approved. It basically works the same as if the parent were missing their check stubs or verification of their income or hours. We cannot process a case from that without that information. The date can be in the future. You and the parent can both say, okay, we're going to set the start date for 10 days from now or 2 weeks from now. Hopefully the worker will have time to process the case prior to that. So you can check your portal the day of and see if the payment has been approved. You can call or email. Well, email is better for providers. Parents can call their worker and see what's going on the day that care is supposed to start. And then if it's not approved, you can reset a start date for a later date. Okay, pardon me. Oh, Francine, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you. Okay, are we allowed to give discounts to parents that do not qualify for subsidy and are not receiving subsidies? Or would that be considered charging subsidy parents more? This would not change our actual tuition rates that are for any enrollment. I hope that makes sense. Anne, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the question correctly, you would be able to do that because you have a standard tuition rate for all families, and you might have a sliding scale fee or something like that for private pay. I believe that would be a business decision that we wouldn't get involved in, but
yeah,
you do want to be careful that you're not charging subsidy parents more than your standard tuition rates that you charge for your typical private pay families.
great, thanks, Anne. And someone wants to know, do parents ever receive overpayments, or do only the providers receive them? No, parents do and can and do receive overpayments as well, but it's not always the provider's problem. Okay, we have bunches of thank yous and we appreciate those, but thank everyone that's here. We sure appreciate you being here. Shani, yes, again, the presentation will be on the portal recorded. Question from Robin, does DWS pay for a parent who is attending nursing school? Robin, parents have to be employed in addition to going to school. If that parent is working a minimum of 15 hours a week, and then if they have another parent in the household, the second parent would have to be working 30 hours a week. If they're meeting that minimum work requirement and they qualify otherwise, okay, yes, we can help with childcare for schooling. They need to report that need to their caseworker and follow any instructions that their caseworker gives them. Somebody wants one more time for the email. It is OCC, just the letters OCC, and at utah.gov. Let's see, what would end up making a parent have an overpayment versus a provider? There are a lot of things that could cause an overpayment for a parent. For example, if they don't report their information correctly, perhaps we learn that they had a second job and their income was higher and they didn't report that. That could cause an overpayment. It also really depends on where the change happens in the parent's review cycle, but there are definitely things that can cause a parent to have an overpayment. And I don't see any more questions, and it is 7:03. So unless anybody has a last second question, I just want to say thank you again.
Lisa, sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
If we need to stop, that's fine. I don't know if you can see on yours, the Q&A box.
Oh, we have more questions in there. Okay.
About 25 questions that are in the Q&A box.
Absolutely.
Can you see those? Or
I can see them now.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Linda asked, will you allow the children in my virtual classroom to be paid now? And no, Linda, I'm sorry, we still do not allow payment for virtual attendance. Oh, okay, and somebody caught that. Glenn asked, does any of this apply to FFN providers? And like I said, yes, it all applies except for the certification piece. What will happen with the emergency payments? Yvonne, I'm not sure which emergency payments you're talking about. If you mean emergency payments when a child needs to change providers due to, say, a provider closing due to COVID, then yes, we would still cover those types of emergency payments. Let's see, Mercedes, does the amount of subsidy payment change, or is it the same based on eligibility? It is the same. The payments are the same. Nothing's changing right now about the income limits or the payment structure. Yeah. Brenda, how does this affect CCQRS? Anne or Rebecca?
It doesn't.
I don't think it does at all. It's pretty much separate, separate stuff. Let's see. Can we get a copy, or do we have access to download the PowerPoint pages? You'll have access to the full webinar on the portal as soon as it's posted. Okay, Lori asks, what if a parent is no longer working but continues to bring their child to care? Will the provider be required to pay back the money since the parent was no longer eligible? This is an excellent question. One of the aspects of our child care program is that parents are allowed to continue to bring their children to child care even if they're not working. They may need that child care to look for work, to get training, for any other need that they may have. Once the parent is certified for the 12 months for employment support child care, parents that were working, it is different if you have parents on another program. But no, the provider should not be required to pay back the money because the parent is still eligible. Okay. And if somebody asked the question about parents getting an overpayment, if it was a question of the parent not being eligible, then that is a situation where most likely overpayment would go to the parent. But just because they lose their job does not mean that they're not eligible. Okay, Missy says, I've had parents put my location on accident and I've had to go in and inform DWS that the client was not enrolled in my facility. Is it smart to check your portal each month? It is smart. Yes, thank you, Missy, for saying that. It is smart to check your portal every month. It's a good habit to maintain. We do require those start dates be verified by the providers, so that hopefully stops any improper payments from being issued for children who aren't actually attending your facility. Sonia, again, yes, the entire webinar will be posted on the portal, the recording. Bowman wants to know, I recently had a parent say her child won't be coming and told me this before June 25th, but then the child came before the 25th. This happened for a second time a month later and then a third time. I didn't report her leaving this third time because she'd already cried both twice before. I figured she would notify DWS if she really ends up not bringing her child and did not report it myself. If this was incorrect, what should I have done? Technically, you should, the way things stand right now, May being the last month, you should have reported by the 25th that the child had not attended. And then after the 25th that the child came back and attended 8 hours, then you would report that they had returned to care and there would be no overpayment. Going forward, of course, this is part of the issue that pay by enrollment is designed to address. As long as the parent keeps their child enrolled with you and tells us that they still have a need for childcare, then that case can just stay open until they get to the point where they haven't attended for 90 days. And then of course you have to report that. Or if the parent says they're unenrolling, if they completely withdraw from your program, okay? And I think we got this question, Christy, about expanding eligibility. And yes, parents should reapply if they think they might be eligible. We got that one. A lot of these questions are the same from the same people, and so we've already addressed them. Linda asked, okay, Linda, we did address that about the virtual classroom, and that's not a setting that our program can support right now. Okay, Lisa asks, I have a child that takes up a full-time spot, but DWS has only been reimbursing the hours that the parent is working to the hour. Is this a new change to DWS payments, and how is reimbursement for childcare figured out? But that's probably a more extensive answer than I can give right here in the next few minutes. But a parent can request, they can request 100 hours of childcare a week. But if they are on the employment support childcare program, we do look at the hours that the parent works. We can't pay 40 hours for a full-time slot if the parent doesn't qualify for that many hours of care. So if you have a specific case that you have a question about, by all means, send us an email. We'll be happy to look at that and explain that in more detail. Okay. And Yvonne, yes, this is only for subsidy kids. And Griselda wants to know, if a child is going on vacation in June for 20 days, do I have to report this absence on the OCC portal to not have an overpayment? Now, Griselda, if they attend 8 hours in June, that will be the initial subsidy month under the new program. And you do not have to report that unless the parent tells you they're unenrolling them and not bringing them back. And in that case, like I said many times, the child could be absent for up to 90 calendar days, and you would not have an overpayment as long as you report that when it hits 90 days. We got that question. Do you know what the state rates are right now? Yes, I do, but not off the top of my head. That's something we would be happy to point you towards those rates on the internet, on the jobs.utah.gov website, or feel free to email us specific rate questions, and we'll go over those with you. Let's see, Grace, I'm sure many folks have kids around them tonight, so no problem. We don't mind answering that again. If you have a child in care already before June 1st, are they eligible for the 90-day payment process? And again, June will be the initial benefit month for all children that are already receiving subsidy. So if that child attends a minimum of 8 hours in the month of June, then yes, they're eligible for the 90-day grace period, I guess we should call it, if they don't attend. Okay, and appreciate the comment that it's that maybe not fair that a caregiver can receive a subsidy when working at a center, but not in an in-home care. Bowman, I'll get back to you in an email on that, and hope I can explain that a little bit better for you, but that's a little complicated. Okay, we got that one. And we got this one. Yolanda asks, why can we not see what's going on for a parent next month when a parent has a case that is reviewed month to month? With this fact, we cannot tell what's going on with the case, and we have no idea what to charge a family for a deductible. And Yolanda, I apologize for that. There are some families who have to be approved on a month-to-month basis. We are working to resolve that. So if you could please send an email with the case number and the circumstances, we'll take a look at that and see if there's any way that we can get childcare approved on a more consistent basis. Sometimes we cannot because of the certain circumstances, but we will certainly look at that and make sure that if it's possible, we'll be doing that. Okay, and Patricia says, I have a parent that lost subsidy for a couple of months and she applied again and got back on subsidy, but DWS didn't pay the whole amount owed. Is she responsible to pay the months for the months she lost? And yes, if her case closed and she didn't get subsidy, DWS can't pay a retroactive subsidy except under very limited circumstances, basically when it's our fault and the case didn't get processed correctly. But No, if the case closed because she didn't complete a review or anything like that, we will not pay those lost months. Sorry. All right, and looks like have a couple more questions on the chat. And lots of thank yous. Again, I can't thank all of you enough for being here tonight. We still have 80 people in here, the ones hanging in there. So one last question. If a parent will be working during summer, but wants her older daughter to attend with her brother during summer and wants, not sure I quite understand the question. Wants her older daughter to tend to her brother during summer and wants to bring him again in August. Olga, this is one of those situations where if the parent still needs childcare and they don't ask us to close the case and they still have the child enrolled with you, that yes, most likely you can still be paid.
Lisa, we have one last hand up.
Okay.
Oh, it looks like it's Debita Brown.
Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
And it's actually Deborah. But my
I'm sorry.
question, that's okay. My question is, I've had children enrolled for years but because of this new program, do I need to go back into my portal and re-enroll them as of June 1st to qualify?
No, absolutely not. You
Okay.
don't. If they've been attending and they've been on subsidy, you don't have to do anything.
Okay.
Right now. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. But no, there's nothing that providers need to do. All the cases will be, I mean, this is more a case management thing for us and just different reporting requirements, but nothing that you need to do to enroll in this program. Thank you. That was a great question.
Lisa, there's one more question on the Q&A, and then I think we're going to have to wrap this up.
Okay, sounds
It's from
good.
Yelena.
Elena, if a child attended in June, left on vacation in July, and enrolled in another daycare in August, and we didn't know about it, will August be considered an overpayment? So Yelena, if the parent goes on vacation in July and the child's still enrolled with you in July, you can receive that July payment and it's no problem. So basically, in this situation, it's the parent's responsibility to report a change of providers. So for August, if the parent reports before August issues, before the August subsidy payment issues, you won't get a payment, so you won't have an overpayment. If the parent reports after the August payment has already been sent to you and you still have the child enrolled and we're holding the space for the child, you will not have an overpayment. Okay, well, like Ann said, I think we need to cut this off. We're here every day, 5 days a week to answer your questions, Connie, Teal, and I. And we sure hope if you have any lingering questions or doubts that you'll send those questions to us. And we really, really appreciate everyone being here tonight. And thank you to every single provider that's here. And thanks, Ann and Rebecca. And we'll say goodnight.